Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. It's Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Adam Caplan's in the house today. And we got plenty of stuff to dive into, explaining this NFL draft process as we get a little closer. I saw Dorian Robinson Thomas, the UCLA quarterback, played for Chip Kelly, coming in for a visit for the Eagles. What do those mean when you come in for a pre-draft visit? 30 of them you get. What do those mean for the draft process, explaining the combine workouts and all that good stuff? Adam Caplan is in the house today for Moshe, who's on vacation, and he joins us here on another edition of Football at 4 here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Adam Caplan, welcome back.
Yes, Mike, good to talk to you. So what I want to do today is change it up a little bit because we've talked a lot about the players individually and kind of how we think it might go and what their needs are and so forth. So I want to get to the part that's super important because how do teams put this thing together? We know at the Senior Bowl, that's really when the offseason starts for clubs. Then you go to the Combine. So that's where the workouts start. Now, we know, Mike, that this isn't like real football. It's about athletic skill, and the drills are done specific to that position. But it is important because while the grade is about 70% tape, you're looking for certain things that you may not see on tape, or you want to be able to measure what you see on tape. That's why they do the broad jump, vertical jump, with the 40-yard dash, the first 10, which is extremely important for defensive linemen. Joe Banner told us, the former Eagles president, that he completely ignored the 40 time for defensive linemen. He said it's just irrelevant and he's right. If your linemen have to run downfield 40 yards, you're going to lose. I mean, they're going to score on you anyway, so you don't want your defensive lineman running downfield. But the short area quickness is extremely important. So, and then, of course, for receivers, you're looking for the 10, the 20, the 40, skill position players, all of them, corners also, and safeties, because you have to have some kind of line of demarcation. Bill Polian, the former Colts GM, who's in the Hall of Fame, told us on Inside the Birds that if a linebacker ran worse than a 4.7, that guy would not be on their board. Like he had a line where if you're running the 4.8s or worse, you simply can't cover a tight end. And tight ends obviously are more often not going to be covered by safeties and linebackers. If your linebackers, Mike, are slow, you can't play the National Football League at this point. You would have to change positions. So we just wanted to go over and explain that's where it starts at the Combine, and we'll get to the pre-draft visits and everything else in a couple minutes.
Yeah, let's start with that. Adam Caplan, Football at 4, the Combine workouts and kind of their role to kick off this process. You know, when we hear these Combine workouts, what are these teams looking at here?
Oh, yeah, and also, Mike, most won't run at the Combine. Some will, but most won't. Now, I know talking to some agents, they think it's unless you have a guy who's really fast. It's like, did it really matter that Tom Brady ran in tennis shoes? I mean, really, did it matter? No. It just comes down to what the clubs tell the agent, and the agent will make the final decision whether his quarterback will run. But it just depends on what the situation is. Now, let's move this forward here. Let's say the player in a position where they absolutely need to be timed. The player has to work out at the pro day. Now, let's say he's got a hamstring injury, an injury that prevents him from running he didn't run at the Combine because he wanted to run at the pro day. And then he had, unfortunately, during training for pro day, he suffers a hamstring injury. This is where the private workouts come out. Now, what will happen is they'll send the position coach. Let's say a corner did not run at the Combine, didn't run his pro day because he's injured. And assuming that the hamstring injury is healed up before the draft, well, he's going to have to work out. And he's going to have to work out for the position coach or position coaches. So what they'll do is they may have a general workout for all teams that could be taped, or depending on how each team looks at it, they may send their position coach in to test the player. And these workouts, by the way, they're run strictly by the coach or coaches. The agents have nothing to do with the exact workout. Because, Mike, you don't want the agents, because agents sometimes get involved with workouts, and so forth in terms of scheduling. But the clubs will run them themselves, and they really have, because they want to see if the guy's injury is healed enough and how the guy looks. And you'll see a lot of these. I'll tell you what, a lot of clubs, Mike, when we go to the quarterback position, they will work out the quarterbacks privately. We'll get into pre-draft visits and what goes on there in a minute. But these private workouts are very important because you don't want anything else adding to the process. And for the quarterbacks, it's really important because you want to ask them to make throws that maybe they normally they wouldn't do. Like at the combine, let's say they work out the combine, and yes, scouts run those there. But what you can do with these quarterbacks, Mike, get the private workouts because you're running it on your own. You give them specific throws to make that they weren't asked to do. You want to see if they can make them. And also, if it's a guy who wears a glove, you might ask them to take it off. There's certain things that you're going to ask to do at these private workouts. And by the way, the workouts cannot, I repeat, cannot in any way, shape, or form happen during a pre-draft visit. The only time you can work out a player at your complex is when it's a local workout where you have like Temple players in, University of Delaware players in, Del Val players in. Mm-hmm. This is where the Eagles found Rasheed Bailey. You might remember him.
Yep.
For many years ago. But they cannot work out otherwise. Absolutely, so they cannot work out at a pre-draft visit.
Yeah, so tell us a little about the pre-draft visits and why teams conduct these. They can have up to 30 of these, so give us a little background on them.
What's interesting, Mike, is not all teams use all 30. In fact, I remember Andy Reid telling me years ago that if they had a couple extra, they may bring in players for free agency purposes. Let's say it's a mid to late rounder, that they'll bring in, because you could tape these interviews. They'll ask them specific questions and see how they react, and they'll save that tape for 4 years later when these players could become free agents. So what happened? Okay, so Mike, you talk about the 15 minutes. First of all, this is where the agents have these kids trained so well. Well, you want to bring them in and trip these back to high school. If you find out something in the kid's background which you're not sure about, this is why you have them in. You have them in because you want more information where you don't think you have everything. And by the way, you could give them a physical. You could put them through psychological testing. Again, but they can't work out there. Getting face-to-face time, Mike, is huge. Like for Jalen Carter, right, who the Eagles had in already. Any team that has Jalen Carter, and you know the tape's phenomenal. You're talking about the best. This is the number one player by just about every team for the draft. But the problem is with the off-the-field concerns, which are significant. You cannot draft this guy, Mike, without bringing him in for a pre-draft visit. You just can't. Like if for some reason that he drops out of the top 10, because Drew Rosenhaus, his agent, said that he thinks it'll go in the top 10, so there's no need to go past the top 10. But Mike, what if he drops out of the top 10? And you didn't have him for a pre-draft visit. Are you going to feel really comfortable? I don't see how you could be.
Yeah, you're on him especially. I mean, you got to try to get it. Yeah. It's like anything. You're having a job in front of you. You want to see them. You want to look in their eyes. You want to have a comfortability feeling that this guy made a mistake and isn't a perpetual problem.
Exactly, because you could put psychological testing. So what I've been told over the years with that is the clubs look at it the same way. They want to know how likely the behavior, if it's negative, is going to be repeated at the next level going forward, because you want to save time. If you think a player is probable to compete to repeat the behavior, the player will be either off your board or way down. He'll be moved way down. More often than not, the player's taken off the board because you can't trust him. Because the feeling is, at some point, not only are they going to sign for, they're going to be making a lot of money as a rookie. You get a signing bonus, you get some fully guaranteed money if you're a first-round pick. What happens when they become free agents, how they're going to handle success. It's very, very important, Mike. So, yeah, these pre-draft visits are when they go there, it's not an indication. Folks, just one thing, though. It's not an indication that they're going to draft a player. It's more for the clubs to get more information. That needs to be distilled. There's got to be something that sets us apart when people say, oh, well, they had him in, they want him.
Yeah.
Not necessarily. They need more information.
Well, and sometimes, I guess, on the pre-draft meetings and visits, you might take that opportunity to get to know a person in the event that guy's a free agent down the road.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying.
Yeah.
well, with Andy, what Andy Reid told me, I was flabbergasted. Now, this is going back when he was here in Philly, and I can't remember why I asked him this. It might have been in one of those pre-draft press conferences or something, but I just remember him explaining it because you never know when you're going to need that information. By the way, the Eagles had Ezekiel Elliott in 2016. I was told they were not going to draft him. But, again, he's a free agent now. You never know what that meaning will hold. Now, they also have one other thing we should mention. Before a player's pro day, a lot of teams meet with players. These meetings are interesting. So I had reported back in 2012, I think it was, the Eagles were going to Geno Smith as their quarterback until they met with him. The meeting did not go well. This is what Chip Kelly wanted. 2013, I'm sorry, it was Chip's first year. To say the least, it didn't go well, and they decided they were not going to draft him as their quarterback. So that tells you if you meet with a guy in any setting, if you're not comfortable with him, you move on to the next player.
Let's take a look at you get the pro days, you get the private workouts before you start to set your draft board. So give us a quick look at the pro day workouts and then the private workouts.
All right, so the pro days, there are a couple that still have to be completed, but these are just about all done, Mike. The pro days are almost all done first. The private workouts are around there. Sometimes they're done around the pro day. And then some, Mike, this is interesting, and I'm going to email the visits have to be done by next Wednesday, a week from today, 8 days before the draft. And the league told me the reason why they do that is because clubs, if they don't have sort of some parameters, they'll bring these kids in the day of the draft. They don't have any rules. So the agents don't want the players to have to worry about this stuff right before the draft. Now, the old rule on private workouts is you could up to 24 hours before the draft you can work a player out. I know up to at least a year ago you could do that. We're gonna ask the NFL if that's still the rule. But again, as I said earlier, the agents don't have any say in this now. Other than they could say, well, you know what, I don't want my player working out here. And another thing, Mike, we've seen some players, unfortunately, suffer significant injuries in these private workouts run by clubs. Sometimes it's just by a position coach. In fact, sometimes the whole front office goes if it's a big-time player. But yet, some privately because they're worried about the guy getting hurt.
And then the draft board. I mean, where are teams right now at setting their draft board?
Great question. So this is the last thing. Right now, this week and next week, clubs, Mike, are having what we call medical meetings where the scouting director and their team docs, they have all the information to give to the general manager and the director of player personnel. And in these meetings with the scouts and everybody else, they go over it and they give the medical grade. And but the grades are like 90% set. But this final information, because we have the combine recheck, we have updated medical information where teams get new scans. This stuff's very, very important. Then also, the director of security, and by the way, this is Dom DeSandro, he has his updated information if he got anything new from law enforcement or from NFL security or anything that he got on his own. They will update that in these meetings here. And by the way, these players could be pushed up or down. If a player is clean, let's say a club had some issues with a player, if they do a background check and they find out the kid's clean, it turned out to be nothing, this player could actually go up the board. It's just a matter of what they find out in a couple weeks before the draft.
All right, everybody doing their homework at InsideTheBirds.com. They're getting ready for the big day. Check out their podcast on all platforms and, of course, the YouTube channel at Inside the Birds. Adam, appreciate it.
Thank you.
And Adam's back later on this week for Football at 4.